Well, hello guys, and welcome back to my little shop on the prairie. Now last time we dug deep into the right hand side of the cab and we cut out all the damage, the rust damage, and replaced everything, rebuilt everything. I just need to finish up the outer rocker panel with you guys, so we will get into that in a minute. Now I've already been cutting and hacking my way through the left hand side, and there's a lot more damage, so I will replace things we didn't do on the right hand side, like this cab brace. We'll do that with you and so forth, and I'll show you what I found so far over there. It's a little bit worse, but let's just look into it. So here's what this left hand side is looking like. Pretty much the same, except it must have been very much worse when the previous fella replaced stuff. Because they have an entire galvanized panel in here that they've already replaced. If it wasn't for the fact that I had to really cut out a lot of stuff, I could almost leave that. But, you know, all this post assembly here is just too far gone. And I kind of suspect it was already kind of gone when they did this. So that's all going to be cut away anyway, so I might as well just do the exact same thing we did on the right hand side. This post is actually a little less damaged on the outside, but I think there is some rust. There's a cab brace under here supporting the floor. I think that's a little rotten. And then this cab brace that I just showed you, well, it's basically gone, you know. Our cab corner seems to be in a little better shape than the other side, but definitely all this has to be rebuilt. Oh, and no coins, just a single 22 round. So we'll put that back into service. Then over on the right side, I've got everything pretty much ready. You've seen all that. I measured out every 2 inches where I want to spot weld along the bottom, as you can see, and did a corresponding measurement. All right, slipping out of my hands here. Come on, come on. So that ought to get us pretty close there with our spot welds along the bottom pinch weld. And everything is looking good. I've got, if you remember the first video, there was quite a discrepancy, probably 1/8 or 3/16 of an inch. This rocker panel was higher than the bottom of the cab corner, and I've got them matching, I won't say perfectly, but it's pretty good, you know. And then I threw the right hand fender back on previously, and the fender hangs maybe a 1/16 of an inch lower than the bottom of the rocker when it's all the way down. So all my holes there have adjustment in them for the fender. So if I raise the fender at the back end here 1/16 of an inch, then it lines up perfectly. The bottoms line up perfectly. So I'm going to be happy with that. So I'm going to clamp this thing up with the vice grips and start welding. Now this corner here wasn't wanting to fit right, and I've already been playing around with it, but the angle isn't as sharp on the patch panel as it is here. And actually our corner of the patch panel is a little, this width is a little shorter than the actual original piece. So I've got to encourage this bend to move with me around the corner, so to speak. So I've got a gap here, and we're just gonna Just gonna just encourage it to come around to our way of thinking here. See if I can get right in the corner here. I'm gonna put a tack behind the vice grip there. Why you were sputtering so much here. Now, the very corner is still sticking up a little proud of the sheet metal because we've changed everything. I don't think I can get my vice grip to follow that around there. It's not deep enough, but I've actually got it pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and tack it here. Okay, that ought to work out just fine. Now this will take some holes. I'll spot weld, drill and spot weld in there. And then I've also got the front to kind of do the same thing with there. So same exact thing, we've got gaps all the way around. I'm assuming you can see what I'm talking about. So I'll just start here, work my way here with vice grips and a hammer, and continue to work it till it's perfect, and then we will do spot welds underneath. Alrighty. Oh, okay. Now up to this point, I haven't really bothered with any sort of cool down on our metal because everything has been very much shaped with a lot of breaks and beads in it, you know, so there's a lot of strength there. I'm not going to get my rocker panel warped out of shape and oil canning on me just because there's a lot of strength there and it's going to hold its shape. But when we're dealing with flat panels that are loose for the most part, if you get my drift, that's another story, especially when we're butt welding them together. So some guys use Wet rag, that just makes a mess, makes the workplace a little more uncomfortable. If you like doing that, go for it. I don't care. Why should you? You know, I much prefer air, so I have my blowgun handy. Now, when I cut this patch panel, I got a little big for my britches. It worked out okay, but I cut it right on the fine line of too small. It's where I can deal with it easily enough, but normally I try to leave myself a little bit more extra to play with than I did. So just be careful. I cut it, I don't want to say I cut it too perfect. I cut it just barely less than perfect. And that's cutting it too fine, in my opinion. I want to get it close and then whittle it down like the old timer in front of the country store, you know. So anyway, my gap is really good across a lot of it, but then I have a few spots here where it's really too much. I've got maybe a little over 1/8 of an inch right in there. And that's no sweat. It kind of makes for an ugly weld. You can do things like getting filler rod. I'll stick filler rod in here and then weld that shut, and that'll be fine. Around here, this is perfect. I've got a nice, I don't know, less than 1/16 of an inch gap, but it's enough that you're going to get penetration all the way through the metal there into the backside. So, you know, it's not really a failure if it works, right? And this is one time, I wish I could have it on a lift a little bit up, but that's just not possible now, is it? So, and a lot of you probably know this, but I'm going to go about every inch, and then we'll cool it down, make sure it's cool, and then start over. Well, when all is said and done, here's what we end up with. Cab corner is in, rocker panel is in. I still need to put a couple of spot welds on our brace, our floor brace. You know, just one or two down here to connect the cab corner to the brace. And then crawl up under there and do a couple more welds from the back side. That's where the pain really starts, you know. welding laying down up above yourself. That's gonna be fun. But anyway, so this is just simple, quick, easy, dirty method that I do for butt welding two panels together. If you want to get one of those fancy pliers and make a lapping joint, you know, and overlap them and spot weld them like we did stuff over there, certainly go for it. This is just what I am doing. Once I had it all welded up, I have my light on the inside shining this way, and just like I explained last time, even with my hood on, my welding hood, I can see pinholes of light on things I've missed. So I just tack weld those little spots of light, grind my tacks down again, and away we go. Now this is all going to get body filler on it, so we don't need to get too carried away. We just want to make sure that our surface is flush or a little bit concave as well, so there's a place for filler to go. Here, this is shrunken down where you can see the edge of my welds because they spot welded it to the floor brace. The original panel is shrunken in, and so you can see the edge of my weld. Not going to matter. Going to fill it in, sand it smooth. It'll be great. I mean, it's very shallow, but you can see it. So anyway, moving on. Okay, as you can see, I have the left side just hacked out of here. So we're proceeding, we're progressing. In the last video, I put in my temporary brace, this thing here, and I put it right here. Well, I can't do that on this side because I have to drill out spot welds up here, and so that would just be right exactly in the way. Now that kind of thing is a great safety net in a lot of areas, and in a lot of places when you're really cutting out structure, it's quite necessary. And I said in the last one, you know, all of this is supported on the back panel. All of this is quite welded together, and it's very solid yet, although I can move it. You know, we have a gap down here of this post, you know. It hasn't sagged yet, and it shouldn't. It's all supported going to here. This is where our cab mount is. I need to cut out the floor brace that is right underneath this floor. What I'm going to end up doing is using half of this, so I don't have to cut out nearly as much as all of that. Where this ends, and I'll show you this in a bit, where this ends here is basically right there before the mount. So let's crawl under there and take a look at that. So we're underneath here. We have this floor brace, kind of looks like an angle iron from this vantage point here. Here's our cab mount. Where that patch panel ends is right here at the bend before we get to the mount, but I'm actually going to cut it right here or to the outside of this angle iron piece, so I don't have to mess with any of that, and hopefully that'll give me enough meat up here to get some good welds on. So I'm just going to go up inside, remove paint, find my spot welds from this 6 to 8 inches of cab brace, and then we'll pop it off with the chisel. We'll have to remount seatbelt bolt or whatever that is, and then we should be good to go. And then up front, we don't have a patch panel brace, but that's going to be easy enough. I'm just going to make a simple channel or C shape. It's rotten on the bottom and the two sides, so I will just recreate that and then trace around it on here and cut it out, and off we go. So I decided that one of my best options to get the floor bracing out was to use a plasma cutter. And I was planning on bringing big old Hypertherm unit from work. I mean, but that thing's like lugging a 1980s IBM PC home with the monitor. I mean, they're bulky, you know. I was talking about that with the owner, and he said, well, just run to my house and grab mine. So I did. He's got one of these cute little PowerMax 30 XPs. And I was looking at that. You can use it either 120 or 240 volt. I was looking at that and said, man, that would just be really handy to have. So I looked it up. 1,800 bucks. No, can't do that. But if any of you have ever used Eastwood's plasma cutters, let me know, because their big honcho, you know, their Mongo version, I think cuts up to 7/8 plate, and it's like $600 to $700. Now that makes me a little nervous when a name brand is $1,200 more, but I don't know. Let me know if you guys have tried it. So part of my problem is I can't really get in here with a drill. I think you could make it happen if you had to, but since I have this option, I'm going to use it. But it would just be hard to get these spot welds, and these are big old spot welds in here. So it looks like I've got at least 4 in the area that I want to cut out on that side, and maybe I'm only seeing 2 right now, but I'm sure I'll find another one once we start popping this brace out. So I'm going to cut these. Toxic fumes in the morning. You know, there just is not too much left on this side. I have been cutting and hacking away like crazy. But I've got the floor brace, cab brace, whatever you want to call it, pretty much ready to get welded in. Here's the old one. Not much left of that dude. I cut out the little square nut for the seat belt. Got that welded back on. So I'm going to throw this up in here, weld it in, and we'll move on. Now you see in there the discrepancy of the patch panel versus the width of the original. I mean, I could easily remove 1/4 inch in width and be much happier on this thing. So what I'm going to have to do is slice this thing the long way, remove 1/4 inch, and weld it all back together. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna mess with trying to cobble that together. It would just look terrible, and that would just be shoddy work doing that. So I guess that will be next. Alright, I'm just finishing up here. Got to do my spot welds and grind down a few where I filled in some pinholes. Other than that, cab corner's done. But I found something at the clearance section at Ace Hardware, so I've got to take care of that real quick. Just hang on. Oh, yeah. All right, back to work. I don't know if I documented it on camera on the other side or not anymore, but both rockers, I've had problems with this the bottom rocker edge is quite a bit proud of this piece. So it curves at the bottom, it actually curves out to the right here, or towards the cab corner, and so I can't get this all the way up against my post piece. So I just removed about 1/4 of an inch down here, and I am about 1/8 of an inch away from contacting my post. Let me move you so you can see that. Alright, I know the black paint makes it look like a shadow. So that's as far back as it wants to go by itself, because my bottom lip piece, right down here, is all the way up against the cab corner. And then my front isn't wrapping around how it should. You got quite a bit of a gap here. I could try to force it in, but I don't think that should be necessary. So I just need to keep, I'm going to remove, we'll go another 1/8 of an inch just down here, maybe on the bottom half. And then we'll see how that looks with our body, our gap and everything. And hopefully that'll get it. I thought they'd be a little bit more on the money. Oh well. I am getting so close to the finish of the welding and rebuilding of the cab here. And that's great because I'd love to clean all this junk up. Just getting tired of working around all of it. But I have a few more things to do in the cab. I've got my left-hand rocker in, and we are good to go there. Let me bring you in here and show you what I got to do now. So I think I mentioned this in the first video or the second, I don't know. But someone tried 3 times to get a hole in the floor for some reason. Who knows, doesn't even look like they ever used it. These are quite a bit smaller even than a dime. I don't know, they might be roughly 3/8 holes, and they're all grouped close together. Now you could try putting a non-ferrous, like a copper plate underneath here and plug welding them shut, yeah, you could do that. You could even make them bigger and get a round plug. I think even like Eastwood has a plug kit that comes with a step bit, and then you just drill it out to the size of the plug and weld them in. But being we got 3 grouped together, I just want to do, I think, what would be in the end be a little bit nicer job. So I cut this out of the remainder of one of our cab corner panels. So I'm just going to trace around this and cut it out and weld her in. Alright, so there is that. That's looking pretty good. Has a bit of a dipsy doodle here where you can see this curve. So I kind of had to weld, tap it down, weld, you know. But our holes are gone. So we're good there. Now you saw me in this case, I was talking on the cab corners, how you need to keep it cool. You know, most of you know that probably. And I kind of know what I can get away with, more or less. So in a situation like this, I've got a break here, break here, break here. This panel is not gonna flex, not easily anyway. Yeah, you can get carried away and you can burn it out, and you can probably warp it if you just dumping a whole lot of heat into it. But I'm using 024 wire, and so my voltage is low and my wire speed is low comparatively. So I'm not dumping a whole lot of heat in here with a MIG welder with that wire, and so I can really get away with doing a lot of spot welds in a row. Now I did cool it down, but it never got that hot actually. Like I said, on the cab corner, you wouldn't want to do that because you have a big surface area that is not reinforced, and you will warp it. But something like this, I know I can get away with a bunch of welds in a row. Now, I would never want to run a bead, a continuous bead like you're actually welding. You will be sure to, you'd certainly burn through your sheet metal doing that. Just a lot of little tacks in a row and it'll be fine. But develop a feel, if you're new to it, develop a feel for yourself. Don't push it, and you'll soon figure out what you can do and what you can't. So anyway, I am going to clean this up so that I can work in the cab. We have one job left to do, and then that'll be it. Now I'm going to be grinding and welding in here, so I got to make sure I can keep my sparks on the glass to a minimum. He's going to be replacing the windshield, so I really don't need to worry too much about that. I may end up just having a window fire, you know, one of those dreaded glass fires. About impossible to get out. They're like them Tesla cars or the e-bikes, you know. When they decide to burn to the ground, they're going to burn to the ground. And even the good old boys in the fireman suits can't even do anything about it. You gotta love this modern technology. The wave of the future. Our cars burning to the ground. Sure. Alright, that's good enough for now. I will probably redo it all for painting. But all of these little holes, there's gun rack holes. Those have got to be filled in. He wants all these little holes filled in. That's a coat hanger. Don't need to worry about that. I think that's just it. These down here and those two up there. Yeah. Well, there's all the shrapnel, everything we cut out, and, you know, little odds and ends left of patch panels. We'll just take a quick little peek here. Both cab corners in, rocker panels in, inner construction of rocker panels, bottom ends of both posts on the left side, bottom end of, both bottom ends of the posts on both sides, and then on the left side, the cab braces underneath, rebuilt all that. I don't know if I actually ever showed you anything regarding this one. See if my camera will pick it up. Yeah, you can kind of see it. I made that out of a couple of the pieces of the end of the rear brace. Since it already had angles broken, I just cut it out of that. So that's what this one looks like up in there. All holes filled inside the cab. Those holes filled. Everything welded back shut, obviously. And I think I'm going to call it. I've got my welds cleaned up here where I braced this, so that's all fine. Yeah. Now, one thing that I would have done differently, and I think I could have gotten away with it on both cab corners. I'll just grab one of these. If you have to do this, and one thing I would suggest is I wish I would have just done a right angle cut right here. Done a right angle cut right here and left all of this edge alone, only because of this portion here. It was hard. If this was up or on a lift or on a rotisserie, that wouldn't have been a big deal, but it was very hard on the frame to get this all squared away with this going into the original panel here. So it would have been much easier had I just lopped both pieces, left the original edge, and just made a square cut here and then gone on from there. So you can keep that in mind. I could have gotten away with it. I have good metal on both cab corners there, but doesn't matter. It's done and it's going to work great. So, all right, guys, there we go. There is the cab itself completed, calling it done. I hope it was at least interesting, entertaining, or hopefully educational on some levels. I don't know. I hope it helps you out in some way. Now, as far as the fenders, we still have a little bit of rust repair. The left one's a little worse again, I think. But I decided I wanted to do a separate video on the fenders because I want to have fun with an old school method that I don't know if hardly anybody does anymore. And I think this would be a good candidate to play around with that. So I'm going to do a separate video on these. Be looking for that. And otherwise, thank you so much for joining me, for coming along, spending time with me. God bless you guys. See you on the next one. Bye.